everyone, I'm Allie Buckman with the Potomac Bead Company, and I'm going to make a creepy crawler for you today. It's coming up here to that fall time when we see tons of spiders out, and with Halloween and that fall decor comes a lot of spiders. So we're going to be making a spider today. Whether or not you want to attach this to a ring, or if you want to use it as earrings, that's kind of up to you. I'll show you multiple different ways to attach the spider to different things. I'm going to be doing it on a ring base. It reminds me of those kind of cheap rubber rings that you got stepped up into a fun and actually fancy ring rather than those little ones that you get at Halloween time. So we're going to be creating this spider. I'm going to tweak it just a tiny little bit so his legs stay more in place. And actually, when I make the base for the ring, I'm going to be using a flat peyote rather than a tubular. I actually didn't like the way that I was able to attach it to the tubular because we created the band first. For the actual spider, the supplies that you are going to need are some bugles. We're only going to be using 14 of the 3mm bugles for the body. Whether or not you want to do multiples or do something different, that's up to you. In addition to our legs of our body, for the legs, we are going to be using 15 OC beads. I have 15 OC beads here in just a matte black color. You really can use any color. They're going to be kind of the joints that hold the legs together and also the little antennas there. So you could use another color if you want to make it more Halloweenish. You could do purple, you can do brown, play it up, whatever you want to do. But you're going to be using 15 of those for the body. I'm going to be doing a flat peyote band, so I'm going to be using a couple more than 35 then for my design because I'm going to be using them on the edges of my band. For the body of the spider, we're using a DiscDuo. We sell these DiscDuos in packs or tubes of approximately 50 beads, so you'll be able to get enough to make 50 spiders. If you get a tube of the 15 O's as well as a tube of the bugles and the body here, you'll have enough to do 50. So in case you want to go crazy, make a bunch or make a couple sets. You're also going to need for the head, this is a RounDuo bead. So it's our 2-hole round, and that is used perfectly here for the spider's little antennas and to join his head to his body. For the actual ring base, I'm going to be using kind of a mustardy yellowish orange, and I'm using a Delica bead. This is DC matte yellow gold that I'm using, but you can use anything. You could do regular 11 O's or Delicas, that's up to you, and we'll kind of talk more about that when we get to it. All of the supplies will be listed on the other side. If you need any, you can link there, or you can also go to show more, and underneath the details here of this video, you can get links to purchase any of these items online. If you live close to one of our bead stores and want to check them out, they'll have the DiscDuos and the RounDuos there for you, and that way you can gather up your supplies. In addition to our beads, we're going to be using a size 10 beading needle. If you're more comfortable with a thinner 12, you can do that as well, but I'm using a size 10. And the brand that I use is a pony needle. Those are my favorite. I'm also using a thread burner. So this is the Thread Zap 2. We also have the Thread Zap Ultra, and now also one by Bead. So you can get your Thread Zap. I'm using 0.006 wildfire beading thread, and you can do green or black for this project, kind of up to you. I have a needle nose pliers, and that's going to allow me to flatten out the end of the thread in order to thread the needle easier. I'm working here on a bead mat, and lastly, just to kind of hold it all together, I have some super glue glue. If you don't like to glue, don't use the super glue. Otherwise, you can glue with me as we get to the end of our project. So to get started with our spider, we're actually going to create our ring base, and we'll create the spider after the ring base is done. I did a rounded or a tubular circular peyote here. If you do like that band, you can also check out that video in our Olympic rings video, or also see bead toggle video. That will help you if you do want to make a rounded band. I didn't like the way that this actually felt on my finger, and I also didn't like the way that the spider attached to it, but it makes a really cool band. So if you would like to learn that, there's different videos to do that. I'm going to be doing a strip of peyote instead. That's going to allow me to have a flat surface to attach my spider to. What I'm going to be doing first is peyote with these 11O Delica beads. So with the 11O Delicas, the first thing I'm going to do before I get started is I've threaded my needle here, and I have about 25 inches of thread. I'm going to use a different bead that's not part of my project to create a stop bead, which I will take off later. I'm going to put that on my thread and take it down to the base of my thread, just leaving about an inch or two. And then my needle's going to go up through it, away from that extra thread 2 times. And that's going to stop my beads from falling off. And I always try to use a different bead. That way you make sure that you're not by accident sewing back through the stop bead, which eventually will come off the project. I'm going to be doing my band here 4 wide. So this is going to be the width of my band. You can do 6 wide if you prefer that. And the number of beads that you're actually going to need is going to differ based on the size ring that you need. You'll be able to try this on as you're working with it. If you have a ring mandrel or a ring sizer, you could use that as well. Once I have these 4 beads on, I'm going to be doing peyote stitch. When I have an even count here, I'm going to be doing 2 beads, so you divide the number by 2, and that's going to start doing my rows then. So I have 4 beads on to start. I'm going to pick up my 5th bead, and I'm going to sew back towards the stop bead through bead number 3. That's going to sit bead 5 right on top of bead number 4. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another bead and sew back through bead number 1. And again, we're still going towards the stop bead. I'm going to pull that in place, and it stops right there. As I go down the line now, it gets easier and easier because you can see which bead is sticking up there. And I'm going to add a bead and sew through beads. The 2 beads sticking up on the previous row. I'm going to go back now. Peyote is always going to go zigzag, one way needle and then the other way. And I'm just adding a bead and sewing through a bead. You're going to always remember, if you're doing 4 wide, you're adding 2 beads per row. I'm going to continue to do this the length of my band. So my band is going to be this width, and I'm going to create it as long as I need to in order to make the size that I'm looking to accomplish. If you have a ring that you wear regularly, a wedding ring, or just a ring that you like, you can use that also to measure and to get a good measurement for the length of this project. But you're going to continue building the rest of your band for the length that you need, and then I'll show you how we connect that band and round it out once you do get the length that you desire. So I'm about finished with my band, and I just wanted to show you a quick way, because it is such a short width of peyote. I did want to show you just really quickly, in case you get this. You can actually do 2 rows at once, and this is called quick peyote. I have on my 4 beads, which is the length of my peyote, and what I'm going to do is skip to the very other side to the last bead that's there. And I'm going to take my needle and thread through there. Those 4 beads are going to sit right along the top, and then I'm going to zigzag back through. So I'm coming back the row behind that I just did. I'm going to zigzag back through. I'm going through bead 1, and I'm going to go through bead 2 on the last row that I did. Then I'm going to skip back down here to bead number 3 in the previous row. And then I'm going to pick up bead number 4. And come out the side. I'll do that for you one more time just in case you are interested in learning that. If you do need to watch it a little bit more in detail, we do have a video on it too. It's called Quick Peyote. You have 4 beads here. I'm going to go to the other side and come right back, so that way those 4 beads are lining right along the top. I'm coming out bead 1 from the previous row. I'm going to go to bead 2 there from the new row. Go to that other bead there from the previous row, and then come out the last bead on the last row. And there's how you add it. Once you have your peyote band done, what you want to do is actually seam it together. To seam it together, you want to make sure that you're ending so that the beads here will line up. You can see here I'm not ending that the beads will line up. They're going to meet and they're going to create a gap. So what I am going to do is do 1 more row of my peyote stitch, and that's going to get me a place to have them meet up, because they're going to fit together almost like a little brick wall or like linking logs there. So I have two different areas here. I have that one that's ending there, and then this one ending on the other side. So you can see they're going to line up really nicely here. We're going to create our seam here, and this is also where our spider is going to sit. I am going to create the spider off the band and then add it to it. That way, if anybody does want to add the spider to anything else, you'll be able to see how that is done. If you do want to add it all in one, you can do that and add it initially. You'll just have to have more thread cut from the initial get-go. So to seam up my peyote stitch band here, I'm going to move my stop bead and thread out of the way. I'm going to go from the end that I'm coming out of back to the other side, just like I did with the quick peyote, and go back the first bead. That's going to pull that and get that in. I'm going to then go through the sides, zigzagging back and forth. Oops. And I'm going to sew through basically every bead that's sticking up. When I do that, those two are going to fit together like a puzzle. So I'm sewing through two on the stop bead side, and I'm sewing through two on the side that my needle was coming out of. You can see it start to really seaming them up really nicely. And I like Delicas for bands because they do really line up really nicely, and they have a nice flush end. If you want to, you can decorate the band. I was thinking of doing that. I'm just going to keep it nice and simple. Once I have that done, because I'm going to be putting my spider right over top, I'm going to take my stop bead off, which with a little bit of pressure, usually you can do that. I'm going to tie these two pieces together. If you wanted to, you could sew back through a couple rows, and that is going to hide those threads without having to tie. I'm then going to take my needle that's still attached, and I am going to sew back on a diagonal just through 4 rows. That way it's going to kind of seam it together one more place and just make sure that it's nice and held together. If you want to, you can do some side knots, grabbing one of the bridge threads right there, making a loop, sewing through the loop, and closing that off. You can go one more time on a zigzag. And I can do that as well. So if you wanted to, now would be the time to add your itsy bitsy spider. So if you want to add your spider, you can do that now exactly to the band, keeping your thread and needle on, and add the spider. So you kind of want to skip to the end of the video here and then come back and add the spider as is. Because I promised that we would show the spider, I'm going to make the spider off the band and then attach it onto the band at this point. That way, if you do want to attach it to earrings or anything like that, you can do that separately. So I have my band hanging out on my finger right now, and again, those thread ends that I've cut down and I had tied off are just sticking there right now because I don't want to glue until I'm completely done with my project. I'm just wearing my band so that way while I work on my spider, it's not in the way of the bead mat. So I have my 12 or so inches of thread here. That's going to make my spider as well as give me enough in order to attach it together. It's about 14 inches. What I'm going to do is also create a stop bead on here. So I'm going to pick back up that silver bead, or you could use one of your galvanized beads if you have those still on your bead mat. And I'm going to create another stop bead. Now what I'm going to do is create the body of my spider. So the body of my spider consists of 4 of my 15-0s and then my 2 pieces, my RounDuo and my DiscDuo. So in order to do my DiscDuo here and to connect it, I'm going to have it, because it has 2 holes, the DiscDuo is going to go so that the holes are on the sides of the body. When I add the RounDuo, the holes are actually going to be going the other way. To start, I'm going to put the DiscDuo through. It doesn't matter which hole you go through because it's the same on both sides. And what I'm going to do is actually create my first leg here. My first leg has a little joint here, and it's going to be a 15-0 a bugle 15, bugle 15. So I'm going to go ahead and add that right now. So it's 2 bugles with 15 O's basically on the sides of it. I'm going to push that down next to my little arachnid body there. And then I'm going to skip over that last 15 O. So back through the bugle, skip the 15 O. So back through the next bugle and also the 15 O and back through the body to the other side. What that's going to do, the reason I'm skipping that 15 O is because that's what's going to create that curvature and that little joint there. When I get back to the other side, we're going to take off our stop bead here and we are just going to tie a knot. And that's going to get my first little leg in place. Now that I'm on this side, and I have that knot there, I'm going to trim down my thread end. And I forgot to say in the beginning, I usually keep my slip and snip scissors right there so I can work with them. I'm going to create the other leg, which is the same. We're doing a 15-0 bugle, 15, bugle, 15. We're going to sew back through the bugles and the first 15-0. So you just kind of push that other 15-0 out of the way there. And we're going to sew back through the body again. Give a nice tight pull, and that'll create that little leg bend for the back of our spider leg. The next legs, as we go forward, the next set of them, is going to have 2 seed beads. That creates even more of a bend. And we're going to start out with 3 15-0s. So we're basically building from the back to the front. We're going to do 3 15-0s, a bugle, 2 15-0s, a bugle, and a 15-0. So it's 3 15s, 1 bugle, 2 15s, 1 bugle, 1 15. So 3, 2, 1 on the 15-0s. As I sew back through now, I'm going to be skipping my 15-0s between the bugle and also the last one that I put on. Just kind of push those out of the way. And I am sewing back up through my 3 15-0s. When you sew through the body, it's important that you try to take your needle to the front side here of your DiscDuo. If you go and your needle comes out on the other side, your legs aren't going to sit in order. So you want to make sure to try to kind of push your needle to that left or to that right side as you're creating. Give a nice tight pull and then force your leg to sit backwards and pull again. The legs are going to move around a little bit, and that's fine because that's what spider legs do. And there we have that second leg on there. Same thing on the other side, doing 3 beads, bugle, 2 beads, bugle, 1 bead. We're going to sew back through the bead and come out on the other side of our DiscDuo here, right next to the other leg. Once you have your thread and needle back through that DiscDuo there, we are actually going to start doing the front legs because the spider has 8 legs. So we're going to sew from the bottom hole of the DiscDuo to the top hole of the DiscDuo. We're going to create the legs and then we're going to add our head to it. So the legs here, I'm going to be, again, always sewing through so my legs sit in order here, from basically the back of the hole to the front of the hole. When I add my next set of legs here, it's going to be a 115, bugle 15, bugle 15. So it's going to be pretty easy, just like my first set. You can play around with the size of your legs. You could use bigger bugles if you wanted to. So you're not limited to exactly what I'm doing here, but I kind of played around with it so it would sit correctly. Just like we've been doing, we're going to skip that last 15-0 and the middle 15-0. Sew through the bugles and the first one. Give a nice tight pull, and that's going to bend that second set of legs forward. The next one goes on, same deal as the first. You could also do this in fun Halloween colors and do some oranges and purples. I'm going to do the same thing here. Once I have this leg done, we're going to add our last set of legs. When I bring my needle through to the other side, again, I want to try to go to the front of this previous leg. So you can kind of push that back out of the way and try to bring your needle out the front. Sometimes you need to kind of push the beads out of the way, but that way it's going to keep your legs in order. Give a nice tight pull, making sure that that leg does bend and that your thread is pulled tight. And now we're ready for our last little set of legs. So the last set of legs is actually only one bugle, so it's our only one that just has one, and these are our little legs. It's going to be 2 seed beads, a bugle, and a seed bead. If you want to make the front legs longer, you can do that. Skip over the last 15-0 and just sew right back your little arachnid. Again, sewing back through the DiscDuo, coming out in front of the previous legs. If you need to, you can kind of pull that last bead and tighten up your legs. And you can see the legs are crawling all around. And then to do the next one, we're going to do the same thing, 2 15s, a bugle, a 15, and so back through. Then we get to add our RounDuo and our head onto our spider. Sewing back through the DiscDuo. You want to come up in front again. Again, we're always kind of trying to sew through the hole so that way we're coming up closest to where we're going to add the little head there. Now we get to add our head to our spider. So when we're adding our head to our spider, what we want to do is actually turn the DiscDuo so that turn the RounDuo so that the holes are facing opposite the DiscDuo. We're going to put on 1 15-0 and sew through one side of the RounDuo. When we're coming out the top here, we're going to put on another 15-0 and sew back through that same RounDuo bead. Pull that down nice and tightly, and that's going to be our first little antenna there. I'm going to sew back through the 15-0 that I just added, and also through the DiscDuo. And it's getting a little tight in there, so you kind of see how I'm wiggling it a little bit. You might have to kind of wiggle your needle a little bit in order for it to get through that DiscDuo, but there's still room. And get the tail in there. And now that I'm coming out the other side, time to add the other side of my head. On goes a 15, up through the other disc or RounDuo hole. You can see that sits it there, right in line. Add my other antenna. So back through the RounDuo and the 15-0. Give a nice tight pull. If you wanted to at this point, you could tie off the thread underneath your spider and you would be done. You could attach it to an earring, or you could do a jump ring so it looks like it's kind of hanging down from a web. You could take your thread and needle out the back side here and kind of hang it down for a pair of earrings. That's up to you what you want to do with your spider once it's done. I'm going to attach mine to my ring band so that way he's going to sit right on top of my ring there. To do that, I still have a little bit of thread that's attached to my needle, and I'm going to sew it onto my band. My thread and needle right now are coming out of the 15-0, which is part of the neck of the spider. I don't really think spiders have a neck, but that's what we're going to call it. That's going to be the side that we are actually going to attach onto our base here. So if you want him to crawl to the side, he can. I'm going to have him crawl straight up and down. And I'm going to take my needle and thread, doesn't matter really where on the band. If you want to, you can put it at one of these points that we had the thread showing. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to sew through my band. And I want to flip him so he's sitting right on top of the band. And I'm sewing from the front 2 beads, or from the band, I'm sewing through 2 beads. When I'm coming out of there, I'm going to sew through the back hole of the DiscDuo, so the one closest to the back legs, and I'm going to try to get my needle to come out there towards the bottom. Pull that needle through, give a nice tight pull, and your spider is almost now completely added on. When I get to the base one here, you're going to look basically where it lines up, and I'm going to sew through the last 2 rows just like I did on the front side there. And when I come out those 2 rows, I want to come out towards that 15-0, that neck bead there. Sewing through there right down around the side. That's going to pull my spider down a little bit more. And I'm going to sew through my neck bead there. And that's going to basically get your spider attached to your band. Because the spider is on top of the band and built separately, I'm also going to sew down underneath, so my bead is, my thread's coming out the bottom here. So I didn't sew through any beads, I just sewed through the bottom. And I'm going to reattach him in some multiple places, just kind of sewing through my band, coming up, and sewing through my spider. And what I want to do again is just kind of go to the front here. If you need to sew through your DiscDuo, you can. If you want to also, and you want your legs to kind of sit the way that you want them to, and you don't really want them moving around, you can go back into your band and kind of connect some of those joints in different areas, sewing through, so that way they sit the way that you want them to. So you could do that if you want, but I'm just going to reconnect this to the band in multiple places. If you have a lot of thread left on your band, you can actually add your spider with the thread that was attached to your band. Once I have my spider on, I'm basically just going to kind of tie off and glue on, or place some glue on some of those thread points. So just showing you now kind of when I have my glue ready to go. And you always want to clear, kind of, if you have a little gunk on the top, you want to clear that off. You can do that with a paper towel or whatever. I'm just going to go right along the side of my super new glue bottle there. And all I'm going to do is, while holding the project, I'm just going to drop a little dab of glue and kind of blow it into place there. And I'm going to drop some glue on any of my connection points or my knots that I have along my band here. Once I have those glued, and you don't want to sit it down on your bead mat because you don't want the glue to dry onto your bead mat, but once you have those glued, you can trim them down. And then you can take your thread burner, and you can actually burn down those ends of the thread. And that's going to get my thread nice and burn off there. That way I'm not going to see all that extra thread. The thread burner is also just kind of something that's fun to use too. It's a little addicting. You can see I'm burning this down almost to a knot. That's also going to keep the thread from going through your bead. If you don't want a big ball there, just cut it a little bit shorter before you start to burn. Once I have all my little thread ends here burned down, then my little creepy collar bracelet is completed. So you can have fun wearing this around the holidays, or just to kind of be a little funky and have that arachnid on your ring. Again, the legs will kind of switch around. If you want to, you can sew back into your band and connect some of those little 15 O's to the band if you want it to sit and stay, but I like how his legs can move. Again, you can do an earring, you can do a rounded band. That's why I showed you how to do the spider off the actual ring band first. So hopefully you guys have a wonderfully creepy little Halloween or holiday there. And if you get a chance, get some of these RounDuos, the DiscDuos. When I saw them laying next to one another, I realized how perfect of a little spider ring it would make. So if you get a chance, pick some up, grab some of these beads. Again, there's links at the beginning of the video or right in the description page. You can also pick them up at your Potomac Bead Company store near you. You can check out the locations page at PotomacBeads.com or shop with us online. If you do like this fun video and want to do others as well, you can follow us on YouTube and subscribe to our channel. You can also check us out on Facebook as well for updates and regular things like that. Also online, you can sign up for our emails. That way you can get new product updates as well as sales, discounts, and coupons for the stores and for online. Thanks a lot, everyone, for watching, and have fun making this awesome arachnid ring.